Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Think Chatbot. This is episode number 8. And as usual, I'm Alex from ubisend, and I'm joined with Jacob. Do you want to say hi, Jacob?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again.
Cool. So obviously within these episodes, as you probably know, we try to build a bot within about 40 minutes to an hour. And today is going to be actually a bit of a different type of content that we're going to produce. What we've been doing for the last 8 minus 7. So for the last 7 episodes, we've been actually building bots from the ground up. So we would take a diagram that Jacob would have put together from requirements from an attendee or an example, a company that has used our platform, and we would try and build a solution within about 45 minutes, like I mentioned. And this is all really good, but we've had quite a lot of questions around actually using different types of features within the platform. And one of them is actually not about building the bot specifically, but is more about tracking the performance of said bot. And so we thought that this session we could do something a bit different, which would be actually going through the analytics package that ubisend has, the different metrics, how you can learn from the bot, and how chatbots provide some sort of different analytics tools for your workforce or for your employees or for your customers, for whomever might be using your bot. So Jacob, do you want to go through the diagram that you've prepared, and it might all make more sense for the people watching?
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll jump straight into the diagram there and we'll kind of talk through and they'll understand exactly what it is that we're going to be diving into today.
Perfect. All right, I'll turn off my webcam and we'll turn on the screen cam. All right. So Jacob, do you want to run us through what this all means?
Yep. So as you can see at the top there, it says HR wants to pinpoint pain points, which is a bit of a tongue twister as I say it out loud. But so essentially, it's become a huge part of HR within, I'd say, probably the last 10, maybe less years, of this idea of workforce analytics and insights. And HR is often at the forefront of kind of putting initiatives in place that improve the employee experience, all kind of aimed around kind of making people happier at work, increasing productivity and reducing staff turnover. But what we've found, especially with the rise in remote working, is it's becoming harder and harder for HR to kind of get the insights and the data they need to put in reliable initiatives. So say if you take in, for example, staff surveys, they often have a poor completion rate and can also have quite high elements of bias. So they aren't the best way to get the insights. And also as well, sorry, my voice is going a little bit here, but also as well, if you're looking at, say, something like, especially as you start have remote working, there's not enough time for people to kind of talk to HR, or like the odd conversation that happens on a lunch break or at the coffee machine doesn't quite trickle down to HR. So finding these pain points and really like targeting them and flagging them up is really difficult for HR at the moment. But what we have found is, and with ubisend specifically, if you have a chatbot, then it's not so much of an issue because it kind of gives you an access to the pulse of your workforce. So as you can see here, the first thing that was mentioned is kind of building your own dashboard. So as with the CMS, you kind of have access to a huge amount of analytics, but with ubisend, we like to keep it nice and customizable. So you're kind of able to build the dashboard as and kind of how you need it to be. So whether you can put in your own KPIs, which we'll come on to in a second, or whether you can kind of be really tracking the things that actually matter to you as a business. And then obviously coming out of building your own dashboard, you've got the option to utilize pre-built metrics, which Alex is going to talk a lot about in a second, use regularly triggered FAQs, which will kind of make a little bit more sense as we go in, and create custom metrics within conversations, which again, these at the moment might not be making a huge amount of sense, but as we go through the video and explain each one, they'll become really clear into how powerful they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit some really valuable points in your introduction there, where the main pain points that HR might have with capturing information from their employees is that it's very difficult to get it outright. So you mentioned surveys, which is a really good tool to do that sort of stuff. But like you said, people are not always super honest, or they don't take the time to do it because it's not compulsory. Or if you force them to do it, they sort of not provide the right type of information or information that's extremely valuable for your business. And so the alternative to this with using bots is that, and I think it was you and I, we hosted a webinar probably a few months back now, all around quantitative and qualitative data coming from chatbots. And it's just a good point here to bring this back. So chatbots can actually collect a lot of quantitative data, which we'll see obviously a lot about, but you can also track a lot of qualitative data. So are people generally unhappy with certain processes, or generally unhappy when talking to bot, frustrated, happy, in a hurry, yeah, all that sort of stuff can be really collected from the bot because you have access to these conversations. And further than that, you can, because you mentioned this water cooler type approach of HR, where you would hear these problems being mentioned here and there in the office whilst you walk around. This is all great and this is very good information, but it's very difficult to go to the bottom of it. So if someone has mentioned that the payroll process is not super good, and you just sort of heard that in passing or in an email somewhere, you can't always go back and see actually what happened or what was the exact pain point or how they actually describe it or which part of the process they really dislike. With chatbots, you can actually see that quite precisely because you can go back to the conversation. It's all logged in. You can anonymize the data if you need to, but it's all logged in and you can go back and actually understand almost to a granular level what these issues are. And so obviously we're going to scratch the surface of this today in this short presentation. It's going to be, like I said, a bit of a different flow than usual because it's going to be a bit more teachy than actually building something, but hopefully still valuable. And yeah, we'll touch on these three things which are presented here, and I'll jump right into the platform if that's okay with you, Jacob.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And as well, I can just see a few people in the chat asking for the link to the webinar. I'll throw that down in the chat in a second. And also, if you are watching this on demand, I'll put a link down in the description.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. So here, as you probably know, we just logged into the platform. So for those of you who attend pretty much every week, you'll recognize obviously the ubisend platform here. There's a bit of a difference for this particular episode is that there's actually data in this dashboard. So usually I would log into the platform and it would be a brand new platform with nothing in it, and so I would always explain that there's nothing in it because I literally just created it. But obviously for the purpose of this Think Chatbot, I needed to have some data, and so Jacob was nice enough to actually dig out an account that has some data in it. So don't be alarmed. This is all fake data. So this is all for demo purposes. I'm not stealing an account from a real customer. So this is all obviously fake, but it is populated with some data, which is going to be obviously very interesting. So which place should I start? Should I start from, Jacob?
Yeah, so I think we'll kind of start up at the top and we'll kind of talk about how you can kind of customize the dashboard and build it yourself before then going into what each kind of separate element of the dashboard contains.
Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. So the ubisend platform is obviously a chatbot building platform on which you can log in and create as many conversation experiences, automate your processes as much as you possibly can within the platform. So that's all well and good. But what you want to do on the side of that is obviously track the performance of your different conversations, the performance of how well your chatbot is actually helping your users, whether that's in HR or in sales or in customer service or anything else. And so obviously we need some sort of analytics package, some sort of dashboard, some sort of metrics displaying feature. And in true ubisend fashion, what we did is we always try to give you as much power as possible when using our platform. So for those of you who know this, we don't limit our users in terms of number of conversations they can build, or in terms of number of users they can have, or in terms of number of integrations or API calls they can have. So everything is unlimited. And everything is customizable. You can create custom conversations. We don't force you to use our own conversations. You can create custom integrations. We don't force you to use one or two integrations that we want you to use. You have access to everything and you can customize everything. And obviously with that comes customizing your dashboard. So one thing we do very differently than any other chatbot platform you might have used before is that we actually allow you to have full control over your dashboard. So if we scroll down on the dashboard here, as you can see, we have obviously a fairly standard date range at the top, which pretty much every dashboard would have. But then we have a graph on interactions, some unique number metrics, which we can come back to in a moment, the top FAQs that have been triggered, and that's it. What we can change here is I can go in edit in the top right, and just to show you sort of the flexibility of it, I can edit my dashboard obviously sort of visually by moving things around. So that's a bit gimmicky, but it's quite nice. And I can come back to that in a minute. Or I can also add metrics. So here, if I click on view metrics here in the bottom right, if I scroll this, as you can see, there's about 30, maybe 40 metrics that are readily available within the platform. Some of them are built by ourselves. So ubisend has built these metrics as default, so you can go and use them. So message types, for instance, or messages per interval, or subscribers per location. All of this could be quite valuable. let's say if you have a workforce that's quite spread out, you might want to know how many people are using the bot in Bangladesh versus London. That could give you some insights. So all of this is available. And if I scroll all the way at the bottom, which I'm going to go through very quickly now, but we'll go back to it in a minute, you can see that there are longer metrics here. Employees that requested an employee handbook. So obviously, it's not self-evident, but this specific metric has been created by a user of the platform. So that wasn't ubisend pre-building that into the platform. That was a user of the UBHR platform that just said, actually, this is something I really want to track. How many employees are requesting our handbook every day or every week or every month? Because that's actually really important, valuable information for me. Same thing around how many employees asked for benefit schemes and pay reviews. So all of this is very, very important for the user of this platform. And you can create these metrics to suit whatever your goal for this chatbot is. And obviously here we're trying to gather information from the bot. And so this is obviously an incredibly valuable feature to do that. So I'm going to close this for a second, and I'm going to go through the metrics that we have here on screen. What we want to do, obviously, is to, like I said, use metrics not just for the purpose of using metrics and to have nice graphs on the screen and pretend that we know what we're doing, but to actually draw some insights. So the first graph we have here, which is actually quite interesting, is the interactions. So interactions are messages that are sent or received. So it's both sides, from the bot and to the bot. And as you can see, it's a diagram that goes from midnight to 11 o'clock at night. And as you can see, we have a strong peak of interactions around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 309 interactions at that time. So this is aggregated data over this entire time frame from 19th of August to 19th of January. I'm not going to do the math, but that's about 4 months, I guess. And over this period, as you can see, the majority of the activity with the bot, the majority of the workforce activity with the bot is around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, this is quite interesting because it tells us some things about the way that your workforce is actually using your bot. Are they connecting to it in the afternoon because they spent all morning trying to reach out to your HR team and couldn't do it? Or are they connecting around 2 o'clock because that's their lunchtime and the only time they actually have a few minutes to breathe and asking their questions? So this is actually quite interesting. To compare this to some other use cases of bots, we can, I guess, I don't have it on screen. I can't bring it up on screen, but it's quite frequent that we'll see companies with a lot of remote workers have peaks rather between 7 and 8 a.m. and around 7 and 8 o'clock at night. Sort of almost 50-50%, particularly because obviously they all work on fields and they all have to go to construction sites and things like that. And so they're not sort of sat at the desk or at their phone during the day. So this is almost categorically an office type of workforce, and everyone has access to their phone during the day. So that's quite interesting insights. Now the total number of messages, not super interesting. We can just keep track of that as sort of a vanity metric. It's always quite interesting. 13 average interactions. So that's quite interesting. So that's average interactions per user with the bot. So the length of these interactions can be actually telling of one of two things. So here, the average interactions, so whenever a user talks to this HR bot, on average, they'll have 13 interactions with this bot within this conversation. So what we want to do here, and if I was the company owner of this dashboard, of this chatbot, what I would do is I would go into the conversations and dig deeper a little bit here, because 13 interactions can sound really good. So it could be that the users are enjoying the bot so much that they think, okay, this is really cool. I'm going to ask loads of questions. I'm going to be very engaged with this bot. I'm going to make sure that I understand very well the answers that it's giving me by asking follow-up questions. All of this could be really good. But on the other hand, this could mean as well that your bot is actually not performing very well because people keep having to ask the same questions over and over again because the bot is not understanding them. So what we want to do is not make any assumptions and obviously dig down into the conversations to make sure that you're doing this properly. But either way, this 13 number is actually really, really important to us. Total live chats, 6 live chats, so that's quite good. What we want to know is, are people actually getting answers from the bot? And this is probably the best metric here out of the ones we've looked so far is, There's been 691 messages sent to the bot, 13 new messages interactions, 13 interactions with the bot on average, and only 6 live chats, which means that from just glancing at it, it means that people are getting their answers from the bot and they don't need to go back to live chat, which is quite good, obviously. Live chat claimed. So this would be your staff, your HR staff sat in the back end of the ubisend platform waiting for someone to request a live chat. And as you can see, we have 5 live chat claims versus total live chat of 6. So now we could be looking at this dashboard at the wrong time of the day, and someone is just about to click claim on these live chats. But if you see this disparity in these two numbers quite frequently, that it keeps happening, then you might want to keep to check in on your HR team to make sure that they are actually claiming the live chats whenever they are being requested. Okay, just a few more. Active subscribers, 36, so that's not too bad. Those are the people currently talking to the bot. 62 FAQs triggered, so that's the next section which we're going to go through right now. So, Jacob, do you want to explain what an FAQ is?
Yeah, of course. So an FAQ is essentially the chatbot's kind of quick answers. So when, for example, all of the kind of quick questions, when somebody's like, where is the employee handbook? What time are you open till? When are the working hours? I'm looking for X bit of information. Your chatbot's going to be able to respond with a kind of quick one answer and be able to tell the employees exactly where to find the information.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, an FAQ is, as its name implies, the number of the questions that your users are frequently going to ask the bot, and so the questions you want your bot to have pre-built answers for. And there's a few things that we can see on this table. So obviously this is the top FAQs triggered. Sorry. So this tells us a few things. This tells us that obviously the bot is working. So FAQs are being triggered and people are asking about it. This is ordered in descending order. Yes, I'm not wrong. Descending order. So at the very top, we have the question that tends to be asked more frequently. Where can I find the employee handbook? And then we obviously have some sort of measure, which is number of messages sent. So the number of times this FAQ has been triggered. And then the category. So the category is something that you as the user of the platform can set up manually. So you can categorize the different FAQs that you have. So you might have a set of FAQs around employee policies, a set of FAQs around contacting HR, a set of FAQs around holidays. And this gives you a bit of an understanding of how many times different categories are mentioned more than others. So if holidays are being mentioned a lot more than contacting HR or expenses or something like that, then you might want to make sure that everyone's actually happy with their holiday allowances. And so obviously this measurement of 13 times out of all of the FAQs triggered, where can I find the employee handbook has been triggered 13 times, and I want to speak to someone in HR has been triggered 13 times. So this gives us obviously some information again. So where can I find the employee handbook triggered so many times out of only 62 FAQs triggered? Probably means that your employee handbook is hard to find, or it's not. People just keep losing it. They don't know where to find it. The information is just not passing through your employees. So you might want to have a look at this number and just go back and think, okay, well, what can we change in this process to make sure that our employees can find the employee handbook easily? Now you might be thinking, and you'd be right in thinking that, well, the chatbot is obviously taking this question and answering it. So why should I care about changing where this employee handbook is? Well, obviously that's completely up to you. What you want to make sure is that your employees are not obviously getting frustrated by having to go back to the bot every time that they need the employee handbook to re-ask it. So of course you've automated that section, so your employees are no longer calling your HR reps. Where can I find the employee handbook, Steve? But they are still having to do that process by going and talking to a bot, which is obviously not ideal. So if you can, try and figure out where you could put this employee handbook in a place that would be really, really easy for them to find. Now, if we go down the list a little bit, how many days can I take off per year? 10 times. So that's quite interesting. That's probably part of the employee handbook. So you might want to think about giving the employees a package as they join the company that is going to display that very clearly, or you might want to create some sort of interactions after this FAQ, which is going to trigger, booking holidays or something like that. Now, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that can I work from home has only been requested once. I'd probably say that this, if it was set up in today's times, this might be a slightly higher number given everything that's going on. But we also have I'm being bullied and harassed, what should I do, which has been asked 0 times, which is obviously good news. It means that things are going okay at your company for now. So that's all very, very interesting data. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, you could edit your metrics, add loads more, and see what you could learn from these ones. So some good stuff to keep an eye on. Maybe if you'd like to have a look, is helpful FAQs. So the number of times an FAQ has been triggered is helpful to a certain extent, but are your users or your employees finding the answers they get from these FAQs from the bot actually helpful or not? So we have a little feature within the platform that allows the users to just say yes or no after receiving an FAQ answer. Was this helpful? Yes or no? And when they hit yes, obviously the helpful FAQ number increases. And when they say no, obviously the not helpful FAQ number increases as well. Same thing with live chat, which obviously can give you a lot of information. Live chat users per location for your workforce, that could be really, really valuable. Again, you might have more people in your workforce in Bangladesh asking for live chat fallback versus people in London, which might be very, very happy using the bot. So this could give you some information about the adoption of the technology within your company, or how clear your bot is being in different languages, for instance. All of that could be very, very valuable. Live chats unclaimed, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, you want to keep track of this type of feature to make sure that your HR team is actually picking these up. Average session length, and then obviously your custom metrics, which we'll go into now. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you have access to your platform right now, is go and click on this edit button, look through that list of pre-built values and metrics, and make sure your dashboard is built in a way that makes sense, that allows you to track its performance, the performance of your bot, and yeah, make sure that your employees are getting as much as possible from this. Does that all look good, Jacob?
Yeah, it does indeed. I'm forever impressed with your ability to be able to talk through quite a lot of complex subjects all in one go. Well, if it was me, I'd start falling over my words and have to take 1,000 glasses of water breaks.
Yeah, no, that's why I ask you a quick question every now and then, to just have a little drink. I don't necessarily value your input, Jacob, but I do value a sip of water.
That's all right. I know my place, don't worry.
I'm just kidding. All right, cool. So what do we have next? We have obviously building your own dashboard, which we've just done. Use regularly triggered FAQs, which we've just done. So just because I've seen a couple, whilst I was just taking my sip of water, I've just seen a couple of questions around the FAQs. We won't go into that too much, but basically, as part of the ubisend platform, you obviously get to build these FAQs yourself. So those are not, so the questions were around, are these FAQs pre-built for us, or what do they look like, things like that. So they're not pre-built for you. It's a section of the platform where you can actually create your own FAQs. So as you can see here, I have a set of, I don't know, about 20 FAQs here, or 40 FAQs, which I, as an HR manager or something like that, would have come in here and known and said, all right, people are most likely going to ask about how to submit the expenses, or about how to work from home, etc. And so you can create as many FAQs as you'd like by just hitting create FAQ. You give it a couple of ways of asking the same questions. So how do I submit expenses? Where do I go to submit expenses? I can think of a third one. I just said that, how do I submit expenses? Where do I submit expenses? Can you tell me how to submit expenses? And so you teach the bot these 3 different ways of asking the same question, and then the bot's NLP engines, its artificial intelligence, goes away and creates a model around this question, just to make sure it understands not only these 3 variants, but also thousands of different slight different variants, or spelling mistakes and all that sort of stuff. And then you can write an answer yourself. So the bot doesn't come up with an answer itself, which would be quite scary. Instead, you can write an answer to this specific question that is based obviously on your employee handbook, or your knowledge of the company. And every time this question or a variant of it is asked to the bot is going to just go and map that out to the answer that you've provided it, and it's just going to answer it. Now, there was a question around categories, which again, they're not pre-built. So here I have a whole bunch of categories, which are in this list, but all of them have been created by someone using this bot. So as you can see, the last one here was probably me, just typing some random things to display that we can do that. So as you can see, I can create a new category. So again, it's not pre-built. You can have full control over that. We won't go too much into that. I think, Jacob, you can also link something around creating FAQs and things like that. I think that's probably something we talk about in pretty much every Think Chatbot. So I think we can skip over that for now. Cool. So the next bit I want to go through is obviously the FAQs. We've done creating custom metrics and then utilizing these metrics. All right. So like I mentioned at the start, the ubisend platform allows you to have full control over everything you'd like to do with your chatbot. So it's not just creating the conversations, but it's also all of the things around it, whether that is the design of the bot, the location for your bot, so a channel, the integrations, but also the metrics. And so one of the things we want to go through now is obviously go through this metrics aspect. So if I go into integrations here and I go all the way down to metrics, as you can see, this is the place to manage custom metrics. Now, why would this be valuable? So this is actually really valuable because you will be able to create conversations that map your processes. So that's the first thing. So if you already have processes in place to request, talk about benefit scheme or to submit expenses, etc., you won't need to make those up or make those adapt to the chatbot environment. Quite the other way around. So our chatbot platform allows you to recreate those into a chatbot format. Without having to change the processes you've had in place for many years or for however long. So that's quite valuable. But that means that to be able to extract value from the metrics that you want to track throughout these conversations, you need to actually be able to create your own metrics. We don't know what kind of metrics you want to be tracking. Maybe you want to be tracking how many times I'm struggling to think of one now. How many times an employee has asked for a pay review? Maybe that's really valuable for you, but maybe that's not super valuable for another person attending this webinar. But maybe for them, what really matters to them is tracking how many times employees are talking about mental health issues. So all of these things, instead of us shoving down your throat the metrics that we want you to use, what we did instead was we allow you to create your own metrics. So as you can see, these are the three metrics I showed you earlier whilst we were in the dashboard. There were some somewhat long metrics, which was almost a telling sign that those were created by humans and not by us. And those were obviously created custom. So what we can do here is we can literally just click create here and create a new metric. So what would we want to do? Let's just come up with something. Employee handbook. No, we've already done that. Asked.
Quite liked the mental health example that you had there earlier on.
All right.
I think it's something that is quite a big, especially with the current situation, I think we can politely call it, going on in the world at the moment. It's quite a big priority for a lot of HR departments.
I quite like that we keep referring it as like the situation, the current situation. And I like to imagine that in 2035, when people will still be watching our videos, because obviously they're amazing, they'll watch it and they'll listen to like the current situation. And they'll be like, what's the current situation? No one will know anymore because it would have just been so old. Hopefully we'll all have forgotten it. But yeah, I get your point. So people are obviously more isolated at the moment. It's actually January, the third week of January, 2021, for those of you watching this in 2035, at least that gives you some perspective. But I was just reading this morning that this is actually the week where people are most likely to be depressed or at least have some mental struggles because it's the third week of January, which is a weird combination of really long night. I think it's the longest night of the year or something like that. It's also very cold and it's just 3 weeks after all of the New Year's resolutions, and people are starting to fall behind what they wanted to do and start to feel, worse about themselves and things like that. And so it's typically a week where people really struggle, or the week, particularly the Monday of the third week, apparently, is the day where people struggle the most. So all of this to say that obviously mental health is very difficult, is very important. And as an HR department, you want to keep track of that. And so you could create a metric that is going to track that within your chatbot. So let's just do that right now. So what do you want to call this metric, Jacob?
I think just trying to think about where it will fit quite nicely into the conversations we have. I think maybe something about the amount of employees that mention work-related stress, because I think this is something which is quite actionable for and it's important for a HR department to know.
Okay, so just to make sure that I follow them, I didn't create those myself, but I can see that people, the people who have followed, almost followed the specific format. So employees that requested, so in past tense. So I'm just going to do employees that mentioned having what was it? Mental health issues? No, it's not that, was it?
They can either have mental health issues or say work-related stress. It's
Work-related stress. That's it. Work-related stress. Okay, so we can create this metric, and now I hit save, and now this metric is created. As you can see, it's right there, and we can start tracking it. So obviously we went off track a little bit here, but I think it's all part of the plan. So it's all part of the ubisend platform plan of allowing you to create your own metrics, create your own conversations, track it, whatever it is that you want to track. And for us in this example, we really want to track work-related stress. This is very important to us. Okay, so we created a metric. Whoop-de-doo, what do we want to do with it? Right there, it doesn't really do anything. It's not tied to anything. It doesn't track anything. How does it increase? How does it actually display some valuable information? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the conversation builder, which is right here. For the purpose of this example, we obviously in this account, as I mentioned earlier, this is an account we quite frequently use with actual data into it and some conversations and stuff. So it has things in it, which those of you who tend to join our Think Chatbot every week, you'll be more used to actually seeing almost an empty conversation builder list here. But here, as you can see, there's loads of stuff around holiday requests and organizing an HR to call back, etc. But Jacob was nice enough to create for us a nice mental health support conversation. So do you want to run us through what you did, Jacob?
Yeah, of course. So this is a typical conversation which I've taken somewhat from conversations with clients quite a few months back and kind of just tied a few different ways of approaching it in. And it's basically an employee is going to be kind of asking about what type of support's available. Obviously, this is quite a wide range question. It could mean mental health, or it could obviously just mean they need IT or technical support, or say like they just need some help with learning and development. So it's just going to clarify what type of support they exactly need before then running through exactly kind of the different things that could be weighing in on their mental health, whether it is work-related, personal reasons, or obviously, of course, the option for them not to say, which is very important in these types of conversations, before then putting them in contact with the correct person. So it's, I'd say, a bit of a triage chatbot that also kind of provides a few resources if, say, they don't want to speak to somebody in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. So obviously you spent a bit of time working through this, which is good. Thank you for doing that prior to the episode. So a few things I want to touch on here. So the first thing that I want to touch on here is that obviously this conversation here is triggered by a specific sentence that the user would say. So for those of you who it is the first time that you're looking at our conversation builder, we obviously have a conversation that's built around a trigger, and that trigger can be anything. It's sort of an event that happens within the bot. So this could be someone sending a very specific word or a very specific set of words, or it could be an integration with something, so an API into something that could happen. It could be someone landing on a specific page, or all sorts of things. Those, I think we have about 50 or 60 default events that you can use, and about the same number of types of events within these default events. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this just yet because we have other things to talk about, but this can be as customized as you'd like to trigger this conversation. But all this to say that what Jacob has built here is a conversation that triggers on the very specific sentence of what support is available, question mark. Now, obviously, this isn't incredibly valuable, because it would mean that your employees would have to ask this very, very specific question in this very specific order and this very specific format, etc. No spelling mistake, etc. There's no NLP around this. There's no understanding around it. But obviously, that's not how you would do it in real life. What you would do in real life is you would create an FAQ, which I've just been going through earlier, which would be, what kind of support do you have available? What support is available for me? What workforce support do you have available for the employees? Something like that. So you'd create this FAQ of 3 different ways of asking the same question. Like I mentioned earlier, the bot is going to go away and learn many, many different ways of saying the same thing again and understanding the same thing. And then you can provide the user with an answer that's something like, we can help you with a range of support options. And within this answer, you could trigger these IT, mental health, workload, etc., which would then trigger this conversation. But for the purpose of these episodes, what we tend to do is we tend to do all of this within a conversation so that we don't have to, go through many different steps just to show you this one thing. So just to tell you, obviously, this is exact match, but we wouldn't really do that in real life. Okay, so we have first step, and obviously when someone says mental health, which is the branch of this conversation we're really interested about, so obviously the rest we just sort of let die for now, because we don't really want to go through all of this and build an entire bot for all of this. But obviously, like Jacob mentioned, we want to be able to track this work-related stress, personal reasons, financial, etc. So you could track this as well, and then putting someone in touch with a counselor. Okay, so let's go through that conversation just to show what it looks like in the bot. And then we'll add a metric to this. All right, welcome to the HR service bot. How can I help? So obviously, like I mentioned, this is exact match. So we're going to start with that. I can help you in the etc. So, okay, so what we want to go down, the route we want to go down is obviously mental health issues. So I've got to say mental health. To help you direct further, could you give us a quick summary of what's troubling you? Of course, you can skip. So again, like Jacob mentioned, very important to allow the users to actually skip that. I'm going to say work-related stress. We have the dedicated counselor that we can use. Would you like me to set up a call? So that's very good because it allows the user to obviously schedule that call themselves. They don't have to actually go and talk to, maybe David in HR who they see every day, and they may not want to go and have this interaction and say that they're really struggling. They might want to just go directly to a counselor. And so this process being automated is actually really nice for that sort of stuff. And obviously, if they don't want to, I think I recall they'll receive some sort of information or resources that will allow them to help themselves. But here I can schedule a meeting straight away from the bot. So here the bot is going to ask me what time and date I want to do this, and I can bring up this little calendar picker or date picker, sorry. And I can do this on Thursday at 4:00 p.m. Perfect. I'm going to send that. Counselor is free at that time. A meeting has been placed in both your diaries. Let me know if you can help anymore. Okay. So this whole conversation is very interesting, very valuable for the employee, valuable for the company because it's automating some parts of this that you'd want to potentially automate. And it's also providing this sort of, I guess, anonymity of the process of reporting that something might be wrong in this person's private life and personal life. So obviously here, what we're trying to do for the purpose of this episode is we're trying to track how many people are actually reporting work-related stress issues. So as you recall, we went through what support is available, mental health. So that's an interesting one. So we could actually track how many people are saying that they have mental health issues. But then what we want to do, because the metric we created was work-related stress, we want to track how many times people say work-related stress to this question. How many times do they answer that? So that's super easy. We've already created the metrics. So what we can do is we can go back to the builder, find that conversation. There it is. And we scroll down to work-related stress. So obviously this is the bit at which the person says that they have work-related stress issues. And so what we can do is we can edit this message here. So editing this message will bring up a panel that has quite a lot of information. We're not going to go through all of this. I recommend that you go through our previous episodes to learn a little bit more about all of this. But what we're going to do is basically in the transition here, which transitions are what does the user have to do to go from the step they're currently on to the next step next step within the conversation. So here they go from mental health support conversation step, and they are going to transition to work-related stress step. And to do this, the only thing they have to do is send a message that is equal to work-related stress. So we know that they're going to select this specific button and say, I have this issue. So what I can do here is I can add a metric, and I can track this metric here. So I'm going to go all the way down to, here we go. And now this metric is going to increase every single time the user is going through this specific step. So this message is now saved. Yep, Jacob.
It is indeed, yep, all perfect. And actually really well timed there, because I'm just going to answer a quick question that I saw pop up in the chat. But that is, yes, of course, you can have multiple metrics within the same conversation. So the question was just around whether each conversation is only allowed, say, one metric or so. And also just to kind of mention the example you used there, of course, you would be able to say track how many people clicked on I have mental health problems, or like so I'm struggling with mental health, and then also track individually how many people then clicked whether it's work-related stress or say a different thing. And from there, you'll then be able to start working out some percentages, and you can kind of do further calculations and really kind of start to understand your workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. You can create as much as you like, which is obviously the purpose of the platform, which is why it's really well adopted in the HR space for this type of granular approach to tracking anything within the conversations. Okay, so I've just saved this. And we can go and have a look. So, okay, so I can go into the demo and I can trigger this conversation. So what support is available? Question mark, which is going to trigger this conversation. I can say that I have obviously I need some sort of support in mental health. I have work-related stress, which is obviously because now I've clicked this particular button, I've moved from that previous step to the next one, which is increasing this metric by one metric that I've created myself. So I'm just going to go through the end of the conversation just to finish it. You might find other resources valuable, etc. Okay, so now if I go back into my dashboard, what I can do is obviously we have the dashboard that we had initially, and what I can do is I can go and edit, add a metric, scroll all the way at the bottom, which is employees that mention work-related stress. I've just clicked add here, and as you can see, I have this new metrics now. This new metric now is displayed on my dashboard, and it has a value of 1, meaning that one person has gone through that. Now you can imagine that you could have this, work-related stress, and then financial stress, and I forgot the other ones in this list. But you can imagine that you can have all of these on your dashboard next to each other, so that you can keep track of what's going on in your employees' mind, and how people are handling their work days and things like that. And so this is exactly how you would do it. I think I've gone through everything that we needed to do for this. So we've basically looked at the dashboard and how cool the ubisend dashboard is, how much, how granular you can go with your metrics and the tracking that we allow you to do. We've looked through some specific metrics, which are more or less helpful depending on what you'd like to achieve with your bot. Some of them are obviously incredibly helpful. We've looked at the other metrics that are not in our dashboard right now, but are available for you if you'd like. So those are default metrics that ubisend has pre-built into your platform that you can just add if you'd like them. And then we've obviously looked at creating a custom metric, which is something I would say we're uniquely qualified to do as a chatbot platform. We actually had a really what would you call it? A really good review, really glowing review from Chatimize, which is a chatbot reviewing website, where they obviously gave us a pretty good grade overall. So we're really happy with that. But one of the things that they mentioned was really good within the ubisend platform is the dashboards and the analytics package. And so you can go and have a look at that if you'd like. But it is definitely something that stands us apart from our competitors, and allows you to do more things than you might with another company. And then we looked at obviously using this metric in a conversation situation. So at a specific step, increasing a metric just to make sure that we keep track of what's happening with our users, which in this instance are employees talking about mental health issues. Anything you'd like to add, Jacob, or any questions I could answer from our audience?
No, I think you've kind of covered everything quite nicely there. You've gone through all the different ways that you can utilize ubisend to kind of really draw out some workforce insights. I'm just having a little bit of a scroll through the chat now. I've been answering quite a few of them as we've been going along. I don't believe too many have gone unanswered. We've actually had quite a few regular attendees been able to answer a couple for me, which has been quite nice to see there. There are a few of the regulars are helping out a little bit.
Perfect.
I believe that is everything nicely covered and wrapped up.
Perfect. Well, thank you all very much for attending. As usual, this was a bit of a different format, so please let us know if you thought that this was better, worse, or generally the same, or if you like a nice mix of these type of formats versus just building bots. I know it was a slightly different format for me, so it took me a bit of time to get into the flow of things, but I appreciate you sticking around. And obviously, if you're watching this as a video on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We release loads and loads of videos at the end of, we release loads and loads of videos every week. And I think Jacob has 2 really, really good videos that have just been published this week or end of last week, which I strongly encourage you to go and have a look at. And so, yeah, please subscribe and make sure you don't miss any content. And we'll see you again next week for another episode.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for attending. And once again, thank you for your time, Alex.
No problem.
See you all next week.
See ya.